Hello, YouTube. I'm here with my good friend Derek Guajardo. We met about a year ago at an event. He's become a very good friend of mine. Taught me a lot of great lessons this year, and he's the author of the book "The ABCs of Thriving in Marriage." He's also a prolific public speaker. Does an amazing job at captivating the audience. I've had the pleasure of seeing him speak about a month ago for a money mindset webinar we were doing. And just an all-around great guy. He's my personal business coach, so he coaches me on business and taking my business to the next level. And just learned so much through knowing him. Feel so blessed to know him. So that's my good friend Derek. And today we're going to be talking about, since it's the end of the year, the keys to success in 2021, what we can let go of in 2020 so that we can move on to a more successful 2021. And we're going to talk about two things that Derek is very passionate about: coaching, business coaching, or coaching the person behind the business, and public speaking, something we both love to do.
Yes.
Derek, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. I'm actually, I get some extra energy from spending any time with you. I think you are an inspiration to me. You're somebody I have a deep respect and a profound amount of admiration for. So anyway, I'm grateful for the opportunity to connect with you and to be a part of your show.
I love it. It goes both ways, brother. It's the same thing on my end. Very inspired. And so you're very passionate about coaching. I've noticed from just working with you and seeing you coach other people that you're very gifted at it, almost like you were meant to be a coach.
Yeah.
How did you get into coaching, and how did you discover that that was a gift of yours?
Right. Well, I think anybody who's in the coaching arena and they're doing that as a profession, they've probably been doing it in an unofficial setting for a rather long time. They might be the friend that family members go to, or the family member that the rest of the family members go to, or the friend that their friends go to. But they're often that person that they might be going to for advice or for counsel, or just somebody who's just a great listener.
Mhm.
And along the way, I would say my gift for speaking wasn't developed early on, but I can't say that I've always loved listening to other people.
Mhm.
So I think I've had a passion for listening to people for a long time. And what I really enjoy doing is delineating between coaching and consulting,
Mhm.
and then even sharing a little bit about even what counseling is doing. So I tell people I don't do therapy, I don't do counseling. That's not something that I spend any time with. I really just refer counseling cases out to the more qualified professionals.
Yeah.
And then with consulting as well. Consulting is you're providing a lot of solutions, but coaching is what I think of as a sweet spot. 90% of what I do as a coach is I am not providing solutions to my clients 90% of the time. In other words, I believe fundamentally 90% of the time, the people I work with, they've already heard the solution. They already know what to do. And it's the same thing like when it comes to like fitness and health and nutrition. It's like, it's not like there's like brand new teachings. Like, right, eat less processed food, drink less sugar, drink more water, eat more vegetables, and right, less red meat. So it's like this idea of coaching is people actually are overeducated compared to how they're performing. But what I try to do is I help them to their performance to catch up to their education that they already have inside of them. Again, 90% of what I do is I help people to live up to the education they already have.
Yeah. Hope to live up to those ideals that they have. I love that. And
Mm.
when did you have that thought, like, I could be a great coach? Like, when did you think about that? Did that thought ever pop into your mind? Because
Right,
obviously it starts as a thought, right? And then it goes to actions and then you start doing it. So when
right,
did you
right.
have that idea in your head? Do you remember that?
Right. And I remember I think I spent a significant amount of time consulting, and I might have thought it was coaching for a while, where I was giving people direction or giving people advice, and it
Mhm.
seemed like what worked for me didn't work for other people. And that's the trick about coaching is you think something works for you as the coach, something helped me become an author, something helped me be a speaker. Now those principles might work for Joseph Warren,
Yeah.
but they might not. So for me, it's figuring out if I'm coaching Joseph Warren, I'm coaching anybody, I'm figuring out what works for this person. So anyways, so to answer your question, I remember what I saw coach do for me. And I remember it was in 2014. So this is 6 years ago. And I was approaching it. I was in a leadership interview for my first leadership opportunity in the corporate world. And it wasn't, and I say corporate world, but really it was an operation center in a call center.
Mhm.
And so, but I was interviewing for the leadership role, and I pursued coaching as I went through the interview process, so I'd be more equipped. But I realized the person who coached me, I give her a lot of credit. Her name's Keisha Pollard. She couldn't be in the interview for me. And she also couldn't, the interview was happening in a week or two from the time we were coaching. So it wasn't like she could get me to memorize all of this content necessarily. But her role was, how can she help me be prepared to be confident in who I was and to perform up to that ability? So anyway, once I realized what she was doing, she wasn't actually giving me direction. She was calling out the potential from inside of me. So I had all of the confidence in the world going into that interview that I was more than prepared for the opportunity. So once I realized that I didn't need the solution for everyone's problem, that was incredibly liberating for me as a coach, going, hey, I could do that. I can help you solve your own problems with the information you already have inside of you. In other words, I don't have to have studied law or even know a lot about law firms to be an effective law firm business coach. And so once I realized that I didn't have to, I coach attorneys. I don't have to have all of the experience as a lawyer to be an effective lawyer coach, because they have the information inside of them. But I am helping them to navigate and implement the best practices that either they already know, or I'm helping them to go to a mentor in their field.
Yeah. So
So
it's
anyway,
kind of like,
long answer to your question was 6 years ago when it was done to me, I said I could do this as well. So I think that was the moment where I said, you know what, I think I can be an effective, great coach because I don't need to know all the answers.
okay. So you kind of had that epiphany. I could be great at this. This is something I could. And if you could go back in time to when you were like a young coach or just starting coaching people, what advice would you give yourself? Or what advice would you give to someone who was starting off, wants to be a coach, so that they could be successful? So basically, what's something you wish you knew early on when you were coaching? Sure. Yeah.
So one, I'm glad you're asking me all these questions about coaching, because I'm 139 pages into my second book, which is about coaching. And I find myself, even as you asked the question, I said, okay, well, that's that chapter. That is, the chapter, that's an M chapter, because it's the ABCs of coaching. And it's a chapter on on magnifying a motivation that matters. And that's the concept of everybody actually has different motivations. So when I was in the call center, I was at one point, I was just a customer service rep, taking phone calls, adding insurance to policies, taking payments. And I figured, if I'm going to be here 40 hours a week anyway, why not make more money and do something that I like more than answering the phone? Why don't I make money as a supervisor as opposed to a representative? So for me, the motivation was it was without a doubt, there was a money component to my motivation. But then when I realized, when I actually got the role after getting coached, and I got the supervisor role, so I had this leadership role in the nationwide insurance call center, then I started realizing people didn't have the same motivation that I did. That thinking, if I'm going to be in the same place for 40 hours a week, why not make $20,000 more a year than I'm making now? That was my thought process. But everybody didn't think that way. Some people were truly showing up just to fulfill their duty, and they didn't want anything more out of their career or their life. So I think that's something I would tell myself is never work with someone, and it sounds negative what I'm about to say. Never work with someone who's don't have similar motivations and a drive that I have. Because a lot of people don't want coaching, and that's okay. And again, even my time capacity, I share, I might have capacity for 21 clients tops. Or let me say maybe 24, if I'm really stretching and really maximizing my time. But if that's the case, then I better pick the right 24. Or if I'm building them out, I better have the right 10, because a lot of people don't want coaching. They think they want it. but they don't actually want somebody helping them to achieve their goals. Some people are completely what I would call complacent. I don't call that contempt. I call that people are complacent with where they're at in life. So my advice to my younger self would be just this. After saying all of that, it would be this. Never work with somebody who's complacent.
Okay. I like that. Never work with someone who's complacent. I'll copy that. I love that. And very good. So obviously you've met a lot of people in coaching. What's an example of a success story that you've had in coaching that just sticks in your mind, where you're just like night and day difference in someone's demeanor or what they were able to accomplish, or maybe just helping them build their confidence?
Right. Well, in the world of coaching, I talk about it's all about results.
Yeah.
If I'm not helping somebody get results, whether that's me as a coach or anybody as a coach, I recommend that my client fires me, and I that's sincere and that's genuine, that's true, just because that's what a coach is there for. They're helping you get results. If the coach isn't helping you get results, then it might be not a great fit. But anyway, remind me of your questions. I'm gonna come back to the point I was making.
Okay. The question is just like, what's your biggest success story?
Yes.
Like a butterfly moment where it's like,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So for me, when I remember the first law firm that hired me, which was intimidating. I felt I went through the period of doubt and insecurity and worry and all of that, because again, never did it before. But I remember when we got together and we looked at a game plan of what was in 12 months, where do you want to be? Like, what's your goal? What's your revenue goal for your law firm? And this attorney, she gave me this dollar figure. And it was again, first year as a law firm owner, and she gave me a dollar figure. So then, we went about the year coaching, and then we got together once about twice a month. We got together on a regular basis. And then when that year came around, we began talking about how I was going toward that goal. And she surpassed the goal by $100,000. And again, in my small world, and again, the bigger coaches might go, wait, that's it. But for me, that was a big deal. Like in my small world, helping a new law firm owner surpass her revenue goal by $100,000 added significant value to what I do. I said, oh, well, it made me feel great about charging $10,000 to $12,000, or maybe even more than that. If I can help somebody surpass their goals by $100,000 in a year, then that gives me a lot of confidence of what I charge people and what I'm doing. And not only did she hit the revenue goal, but she is an incredible advocate for me. She brings up my name in other circles of attorneys over and over again. She'll take screenshots. Like if she shares it in a Facebook attorneys group for only attorneys, she'll take a screenshot of her post that she shared about me, and she'll send it over to me just so I know she's showcasing my name in front of other attorneys, which again, that's always a big deal, that somebody is so satisfied. Not only do they have the results, but they want other people to know about it. So I think that's probably one of my favorite stories thus far in my short journey. I'm less than 2 years in after launching my own business. But that's probably one of my favorite stories, like this, helping somebody surpass their revenue goal by $100,000.
Yeah. Very awesome. You mentioned a few things I might want to touch on. One is everything's scary when you first do it. I want to talk about that first. And then you talked about launching your own business. I want to talk about that as well. So I'm taking some notes here. But what advice do you have for someone who is doing something that they've always wanted to do? It's outside their comfort zone, and they feel fear, basically. They feel doubt. They feel all those thoughts in your head, like, am I really going to do this? Can I do this? What advice do you give to people in those types of situations, or would you give?
Yes. There's two quotes that I love using in that setting. Number one is, do it afraid. Do it afraid. So feel the fear. Fear is normal, reasonable, and do it afraid. Like when it comes to a goal, when it comes to an ambition, I'm not talking about like whatever, bungee jumping off of a random cliff, at the Grand Canyon, not necessarily like, I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about daredevil antics, but we're talking about having conversations with people that we perceive to be more important than us,
Yeah.
or asking people to interview, or asking people to mentor you, or even trying to sell a product, a service, or a program to someone. That's intimidating at first. You've never done it. It's like, okay, well, hey, do you want to be one of my clients? That's
Mhm.
scary, but do it anyway. Do it afraid. Do it while you feel the fear. And with time, what I've just seen over and over again is that fear doesn't stay around very long when you face it perpetually. And I have quotes on the concept, but it's action helps to melt the fear away.
Wow.
Inaction is not only the origin of fear, or the cause of fear, but it perpetuates fear. Inaction. But
Yeah.
there's something about action that does it. So that's one quote. Another quote I'll give you is, build your wings on the way down.
Yeah.
Launch out there, and as you're falling down, to build your wings on the way down. I think that those things are significant for anybody who's seeking to grow, to be okay with being uncomfortable.
Okay. Very good. So some great tips there. Do it afraid. It seems like it's all based around action. It's sort of, you get rid of your fear by taking action,
That's right.
and it goes away. Is there an example from your life of something where you did that, that you can think of, where you were scared of something and you melted it or shrunk it through action?
Oh, I mean, that's like my entire life. I think about being. I remember just being afraid of social environments. I mean, I'm telling you, like, I remember the anxiety that first day of school, for the day before the first day of school, anxiety, like
Oh, yeah.
going to a classroom, not knowing who, And the funny thing is, I grew up in the same side of town, so it wasn't like I knew I was gonna know somebody, but there's just a little bit of that anxiety. I think about that. I think about writing a book, this year, which is a major accomplishment. Now, but there were so many limiting beliefs I had to overcome, and fears like, hey, well, I'm not educated enough. Like, surely I need a master's degree or a doctorate degree to write a book.
Yeah.
Or well, I've only been married for 6 years when I started writing the book, or 7 years when I was completing the book. Like, I haven't been married long enough to write a marriage book.
Mhm.
Or don't I have to, work on a book for a whole year? Doesn't it need a whole 365 days worth of time? Like, all of these things were limiting beliefs of, I created these obstacles or hoops that
Yeah.
were not even real. They only existed in my head. But I just showed up every day to write. I think it was a little bit over 100 days.
Mhm.
But it's showing up every single day to write. And then I finished the book, and I thought, oh, like, I didn't I didn't need a publisher. Like, that was another one. Like, do I have to get a publisher? Like, do I have
Yeah.
to go through the traditional way? What if I did it all myself, so I could figure out exactly how much value a publisher would be offering me? But
Yeah.
anyway, I think that's a significant one. Writing a book, just because it's scary to approach it. I think the concept of even marriage, my wife and I talked about the idea. Like, I think there are some fears of, what if we had a marriage book and then, like, my wife leaves me later on, or what
Yeah.
if I start acting a fool and I leave her? Like, what then what? Like,
Yeah.
but I think for me, what was helping those fears, like, especially when it comes to writing a marriage book, which was, as long as the principles transcend us. In other words, like, for me, like, honesty is a great virtue to live by, to be as a truthful person who speaks honesty.
Mhm.
Now, um, if I choose to start lying, it doesn't mean honesty is less good or less effective. I still think it's the best way to live. Now, if I veer from that path, honesty still transcends me, or it's above me, or it's still a great virtue. So as I wrote the book, it was the same concept.
Mhm.
As long as the principles I write about work and they transcend me, whether I'm living them or not, and I'm trying to live them all.
Yeah.
Um, but if I ever, take a left turn over and over again, because it's decision-based content that I write about in my marriage book.
Yeah.
But anyway, those are some fears. Whether it was writing the book, the process of it, or even the content of it, of writing about a topic where a lot of marriages don't make it. And I
Yeah.
certainly don't want to be one of those people.
That's statistic. Yeah. I've read your book. I was one of the, I forgot the name of the edition you gave me. You gave me one of the first editions
Mm,
of
The,
the book, and I really
the,
appreciate it.
the
It's
artifact
the
edition. Yes, yes.
artifact edition.
Uh-huh.
And it's a great book. I'm not married, but I think it has good tips in general, just even if like dating. At that time I was dating. So it was good tips for that and just good relationships, they're built on trust and honesty. I remember you mentioning that, which is like, shouldn't I be married 50 years before I write the book?
Right,
It's
right.
so easy to kind of get in your head with stuff like that. I think I do that too. But yeah, shout out for that book. I put a link in the description to your book on Amazon. So if people want to purchase it, they can check it out in the description below. And mentioned quite a few things there. Since we're on the topic of marriage, what's one advice, if you could only give one piece of advice concerning marriage, what would that advice be for people who are about to get married?
Yeah, buy my book, of course.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I'm such a big words guy.
Yeah.
I think if somebody can wrap their head around this one concept of use your words and actions to build and benefit your partner. Like if you just get that, you'll be all right. Like the moment you start, whether it's it's something that I believe, you're probably familiar with the book, but Dale Carnegie wrote the, how to win friends and influence people. And one of the chapters that is something, it's so pivotal, I believe in, it's this concept of you can't win an argument. And he writes a whole chapter about it, but we just believe that. But anyway, this all comes from the one piece of advice you asked me for, which is, use your words and your actions to build and benefit your spouse. You get that concept down. It can protect you from arguing, can protect you from unnecessary criticism. It can help you to understand this, how to connect with your spouse.
Very cool. Great advice. Let me see how we're doing on time here. Good. And so another thing I wanted to circle back around on is starting your business 2 years ago. What was that journey like of starting your own business? Because, how did that go? Like, what was the impetus? Why did you start your own business? And I know there were ups and downs. I'm sure there were ups and downs with that. So what were those ups and downs?
So started the business. Well, I was getting laid off at Nationwide, right? My supervisor role was going away. And although I wasn't getting like fired, I certainly felt disposable going through that experience. And, when I was getting laid off, the company provided me a severance package. And that package, if you counted everything, like you counted unemployment, you counted the 7 weeks of severance, the 3 months of payment as an employee without any responsibility. It was like the value that, my wife and I looked at, it was like a $30,000 like package, which again, for when I started asking advice from my friends and getting outside counsel, people were like, hey, look, like, that kind of package is unheard of. And if there's a perfect time to launch a business, then this is it. This is Moses in the Red Sea. This is the Red Sea parting for you, like, to do this. And so anyway, I took that advice and did it. Now, because I had the cushion though, I didn't feel pressed to necessarily, really start implementing, for me, even like living up to everything I had learned. So I probably I unnecessarily waited 10 months before I was really practicing like everything. Like I'm talking practicing 80, 95% of what I learned and how to build a business. But so I say that because from March of 2019 is when I started the business, when I left Nationwide, to I think it was like December. I think I was just shooting zeros. I'm talking like as far as the income from coming out of the business was zeros. It was like zero. And again, it didn't. I didn't feel it as much because of the severance package. But eventually, like, I mean, it started to feel that like, oh my gosh, like I'm supposed to be trying to build a business and I'm shooting zeros. But it was the concept of being patient and being consistent over time that to me, it was almost like filling up, a glass of water. Like if I podcasted with somebody, that was like a little deposit of water, or if I met somebody new at a networking event, that was a deposit of water. If I joined a networking group, like, a strong networking group, like, BNI, Business Network International, That's
Mhm.
another deposit. But it took 10 to 12 months before I started reaching that tipping point of, oh, like people actually want to pay me
Mhm.
for my services. People actually want to invest and pay good money for what I do. So anyway, I'm just giving you the perspective of the first, 9 months. It was a 9 months of shooting zeros
Mhm.
before it really started picking up traction.
Okay. Do you remember when you first started making money? What was that like? And I don't know if you can share details of that, but how did that start? How did that start off? Where you were just like, oh, I'm making money.
Right. I think it was like January last year. I was like, oh, like I closed probably 5 significant deals. And like I started like going through, I was like, oh, okay, like if I just keep doing this, like if I could replicate what I did in January last year, over and over again. So I feel like I was picking up significant momentum in January into February. Of course, the pandemic hit. And
Yeah.
then a lot of my clients were like, pull the brake lever and
Yeah.
pause coaching because they're thinking about their own situation, and it's completely fine.
Mhm.
Um, then and then I think there was like a 4 to 5 months of another pause. Like again, I think there's a couple of months again shooting zeros again. I was like, oh snap! Like this is again kind of crazy.
Mhm.
But then when I think the normalcy of what we were doing started to kick in, and then business just shot back up again. But I think it was January of last year where it was a first significant clients.
Yeah.
I was closing. But yeah.
Okay. It's funny. It's really a testament to patience. I mean, you put in the work, keep going, and then like all at once, everything starts falling into place. I think that's true of a lot of business.
Right, right. Well, even like when business slowed down during the pandemic, it was like, okay, I've had this book that I've wanted to write. If I'm not spending my time marketing, or if I'm not spending my time with clients, then this is a great opportunity to write a book. And plus, the unintentional consequences of writing the book is it's given me a lot more credibility. So people have gone, oh, well, you're an author, you write a book. They
Yeah.
kind of put that gives me more authority or more credibility for who I am as a person.
Mhm.
So they'll give me more. They'll give me more of an opportunity to prove myself as a coach or as a speaker because I've produced this work, this book. That's the crazy thing about it is it could have been a bad book or a poor book. I don't think it was. I put my heart and soul into it,
Yeah.
but it could have been, and people just give me credibility just for having completed this project.
Yeah. Just for having written the book, it lends authority to your name. Yeah.
Exactly right.
I've heard before, like a book is like the ultimate business card, if you think about it that way. But it's very
Right,
cool.
right. I'll add to that.
Yeah.
Not only is it the ultimate business card, it's also the ultimate thank you letter. Like, so if you think about how many organizations, like I think Ninja Selling is an organization that it works with is a big broker, big real estate broker in San Antonio, and they
Mhm.
use Ninja Selling. But one of the components of Ninja Selling is that personal touch, like actually write handwritten letters to
Mhm.
to your clients, to your prospects, like that personal touch. But I was talking to my wife the other day about it. I said, is there a better thank you letter than for me to write inside of the book, the thank you for whatever it is? I mean, I gave you one, right? I gave you
Yeah.
one on, you invited me to another podcast with your friend Julie. And I said, I'm going to write inside of the book, um, I just did praising Joseph, thanking him for his friendship and what it's meant to me. And I'm going to read that on the podcast. But for me, that's also so yes, business card, but
Yeah.
also thank you letter.
Okay. That's so awesome. I love that. And you're kind of a maximizer, which means you kind of get the maximum value out of everything, which is something I've noticed about you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
I'm
that's,
always thinking about, hey, how can I take this one step further?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so now that I have a book, that's a thank you letter for life. And even if people aren't married, they appreciate the sentiment. There's a proverb um, that says the gift opens the way for the giver. And I think about that gift, that's a very, very much of a tangible gift. So if you think about that, now that I have a book, the book can be used as a gift that that again, from that divine perspective, that proverb perspective, will open up new opportunities for me, um if I approach using the gift strategically. um, to again maximize, open up new opportunities.
Okay. Very cool. And you mentioned some other things. I wanted to talk a little bit about, um, you mentioned when you left the corporate job, you kind of felt disposable. And I think we've all felt that at some point. So I wanted to ask what advice you would give to someone in that situation. I'm going to talk about hard situations people go through. Someone who's getting laid off, what advice would you give them?
Right. So there's a variety of circumstances that are connected to a layoff. It might be, first last in, first out. It might be a legitimate not a good job fit.
Yeah.
For me, um it going through the layoff, for me, it was incredibly ambiguous
Mhm.
in that they didn't say, hey, well, you did this, or this is why you were picked. Because for me, there are 35 other supervisors or 35 other leaders,
Mhm.
and there were 8 of us chosen to have our roles eliminated. But we weren't given any explicit explanation as to why that was.
Yeah.
But anyway, so as a person of faith, I believe every human being has value,
Mhm.
and every human being is loved and is. And so if I embrace that concept that every human being is valuable, is powerful, is unstoppable, it is again divine concepts,
Mhm.
um, then I think my encouragement to that person would um, be your own best cheerleader, not your own worst critic.
Yeah.
I've heard worst critic as people describing themselves. I've heard that probably thousands of times.
Mhm.
Um, it's such, I mean, I'm talking less than 5 times in my entire life have I ever heard somebody talk about them being their own best cheerleader.
Mhm.
And when I say, and I'm saying that, I'm saying like the words that you use to describe yourself, make those the best words you could possibly give someone, and
Yeah.
use that to build yourself up. Again, because I'm a person of faith, I have a number of scriptures that I think about,
Mhm.
in that context. But even for people that are not of faith, this same principles are true of being a person of value, seeing yourself as unstoppable, seeing yourself as powerful, seeing yourself as intelligent, as competent, as more than able, filled with knowledge, flowing with virtue. And anyway, I could
Yeah.
get all poetic about it, but I think it's I think the Nathaniel Brandon, he's an expert in self-esteem, but the way he describes it is, um, the value statements we make about ourselves influence every part of our lives. So
Yeah.
what I'm talking about, seeing myself or seeing you or seeing whoever as valuable, unstoppable, powerful, intelligent, competent, more than able, these are value statements. And I, like him, believe that the value statements you make about yourself will influence every part of your life.
That's huge. And I hear that so often, including from myself, that I'm my own worst critic. I hear that a lot.
Hmm.
Definitely something to work on. Would you mind mentioning one of your favorite scriptures on that point? Because I know my audience is very um, sort of faith-based, even though I'm not a faith-based channel. But would you mind mentioning one of your favorite scriptures on that topic of being your own best cheerleader and kind of making that switch? You can be your own.
Yes. Right. Man, let me give you. So here's probably my favorite one. And it comes from the book of Romans in chapter 15, and and what Paul says in that statement, he goes, "I'm confident that you are um, full of knowledge and competent." And he says, I'm sorry, he says, filled with goodness, full of knowledge.
Mhm.
And what I've loved doing, I'm very fortunate because um I'm asked to speak in the business world
Mhm.
and in the church world, and that's a really rare. I see it as normal because it's my life, but I'm really starting to see it more objectively and seeing that it's a rare opportunity that I'm given. But the reason I'm saying that is when it comes to people of faith, and you think about that passage, to consider being filled with goodness and full of knowledge, like this idea, people of faith would almost rather consider themselves and other people sinners before they would like to consider themselves filled with goodness and
Yeah.
full of knowledge. So it's a to me, what I love doing for people of faith is I say, what if you really believe this? What if you actually fully embrace that you are filled with goodness, full of knowledge? What action or habit would you build in light of believing this one concept over and over again?
Yeah.
And I let them, again, the coach of me is, if you just believe this, what would you do?
Hmm.
You know, and then I get crazy answers. Like, I get, not crazy, but I get answers like somebody goes, hey, I'll write a book. So I'm like, well, go write a book, or somebody goes, I'll get my PhD. Get your PhD.
Yeah.
What do you know? Like, if you actually believed you were filled with goodness, full of knowledge, what would you do? So anyway, that's one of my favorite value statement passages to embrace, especially because we're quick to believe the opposite. And there's a time and place to see ourselves as a sinner, and there's a time and place to see ourselves as I call it not enough. Like, there's times when it's good for us to see ourselves as enough, but there's also times when it's actually most helpful to see ourselves as not enough. But knowing how to fill those two and knowing the corresponding best times is everything.
Very cool. Great topics there. Okay. Great advice on that. Something very near and dear to my heart that I think about a lot. And just some other things that happen, kind of pivotal moments in people's lives. What would you say from someone, I know you're not a therapist, going through a bad breakup? Because I've seen a breakup propel someone towards success, or it can be like an excuse to go in the wrong direction. So what advice would you give to someone in that case who's going through like a bad breakup or something like that?
Right.
Or divorce, because you're talking about marriage. Yeah.
Right. So when I talk to people about their identity, and when I define identity, I'm talking about the concept of who you are.
Yeah.
And divorce and breakups can certainly have a huge impact with the way you see yourself, right? Whether it's, hey, I'm not enough, or I'm not worthy of love, or something to the effect of I'm not. Somebody would rather be alone than with me, or if there was some kind of infidelity, if there was some kind of another person involved, then it's like, oh, this a person would rather be with somebody else rather than me. I think it comes back to this idea of not just our value statements we make about ourselves, but also how we frame and interpret events that take place and the messages that we take from them. And what I mean by that is, so I've had conversations where a spouse, or the spouse, or rather the new divorcee, or divorcee, or however you would describe it, the spouse, the husband, was unfaithful, and that led to the divorce. Now, what's the interpretation of that? The interpretation of that event, to me, is everything. Now, there's one interpretation of saying that, well, I wasn't a good wife, so he was forced or obligated to go get fulfilled elsewhere. I think that's a poor interpretation of the event. A better interpretation of the event, I know, and it's so particular in this stuff, but the interpretation of negative events, or even traumatic events, is everything. So it might be, when it comes to an unfaithful spouse or an unfaithful husband, for me, it's going back to this idea that nothing I say or do will cause unfaithfulness in and of itself. That's infidelity is its own stupidity. I don't cause that, and nobody causes it. So instead of interpreting somebody's infidelity as my fault or as their fault, it's no, that's an individual's stupidity in and of itself. Again, that might be harsh, but I think, to me, when you think about somebody's poor decision that affects a lot of people in a horrific way, in a traumatic way, I think it's, what's the best interpretation of the event that helps me to move on in a healthy, wholesome manner. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's a deeper thought, but our interpretation of events is pivotal for progressing and improving from traumatic events.
Okay. That makes sense. The interpretation, how you view it. I like that.
And I talk openly about going through trauma with my dad. My dad, I talk openly about him, his suicide. Right? I speak openly about that experience, and not making that about me as a son. I was 17 at the time. Now, an incorrect or a unhealthy interpretation would be that I caused it, or I wasn't a good enough son, or something to that effect. But then a better interpretation is that no, like he can make his own choices, and that are completely independent of me. So I know that's a deeper topic for your audience. So, but I think that's something that's relevant as far as how we interpret traumatic or negative events that
It's
help
so
us move
important.
forward.
Well, it's so important. We've all go through traumatic events in our lives. It's just a matter of, it's part of living. But the way you view it, it can either hold you back or it can propel you forward.
Exactly right.
And then, I think the ultimate is like if you can help other people too who've been in the similar situation.
Right.
I talk sometimes, I don't know how openly, but I used to like have a drinking problem big time. And I'm not at the point yet where I help a lot of other people with it, but it's always on my mind. Like at some point, I think my purpose is to help other people in that same situation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
so
Right. And I've talked openly about it. I try to be mindful and deliberate
mhm,
when I bring it up. And I know it has made a difference. I remember, even this year in 2020, I got a phone call from a wife. She called me. This is wild. She called me the day of her husband's suicide, and I was like, and and to get that phone call, and she said, "Hey, I've heard you talk about your dad's suicide before, and I wanted to give you a call." And in those moments, it's not even about offering the best scripture in the world. I mean, my response was, um, "Look, I want you to know I love you.
mhm,
I'm here for you. Let's say a prayer together, and you let me know if there's any way, shape, or form I could serve you or your family."
yeah,
But the power of what you just described, I was just sharing what I'd been through, and
mhm,
somebody on the worst day of their life remembered me and said, "I know somebody who can relate to this trauma," and they can make a phone call. So anyway, those are just powerful things, and there's um, again, that's one of the worst phone calls I've ever received, probably top 5 worst ones. But there's also within that worst call, there's something beautiful and precious about the notion of me talking about a horrific moment in my life
mhm,
has bonded two people that are mutually going, that she was presently going through one of the worst days, if not the worst day of her life. I
mhm.
had went through the worst day of my life, and now we're bonded, um, having gone through something similar together.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. Definitely tough, but yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And wanted to go on to something, just another, like just kind of like tips that sometimes I see that I think you could help with when it comes to being around negative people or just people who put you down when they're very close to them, like say their family. What advice would you give in that type of situation? Then these are just ideas that I've heard from people before. Like I deal with this. Um, you like everyone always says, distance yourself from negative people. What if it's like family or things like that, or someone who's really hard to distance from?
Right.
Yeah.
Um, I think when I was younger, I was idealistic, and I thought anybody, if they had enough quotes, or if they had enough, Bible verses, or if they just had my perspective, surely they could help change their lives. But I just realized this idea again. I'm going to cite back to Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. He says, um, "A man convinced against his will
Mhm.
is of the same opinion still," and it's this idea where even if you manage to convince somebody because of your intellect or because of what you've memorized, um, even if they're convinced for 30 minutes, 30 minutes later, they're going to go back. So
Yeah.
it's this idea is I've stopped really, I mean, there's very, I don't think really any arguments or debates I get into nowadays. And when I was younger, I was getting into all of them. Like, hey, bring them on. You have something with, I'll take them all on. But now it's more of, if I don't spend a lot of time in it.
Yeah.
So my advice to people who are around negative people is, if you consider the negative aura or the negative attitude a fire, I'm not going to put a single log into that fire to make it any brighter. I'm going to love, I'm going to serve, I'm going to praise, I'm going to thank the people. But that's where I think that, I think of a proverb, like, and it's this idea of if you correct a fool, they'll hate you. You correct a wise man, they'll love you. But I know a number of great, good people spend their time trying to correct fools, and it doesn't do anything for anybody except
Yeah.
it can anger the good person and just almost bring some kind of like twisted pleasure to the fool. So anyway, I just don't my advice is add no fuel, add no log, add no popsicle stick to the fire. Like, just um let it burn independent of you. Don't add to it.
Okay. I like that. Some great perspectives. Thank you. Thank you, Derek. And when it comes to coaching, let's see what we're doing on time. Is there anything else you want to say in regards to coaching to leave our audience with, or just maybe advice on, let me ask you a specific question. And what's your biggest lesson that you learned in 2020? And what are you going to take forward, or what advice would you have for people going into 2021, the next year?
Mm-hmm. I think so in the context of coaching, or is it anything?
I think in the context of anything, that'll be a jumping off point from coaching. In general, what's the biggest lesson you learned in 2020?
I'm gonna say the biggest lesson, which actually was a lot of fears around, it's this concept of riches and niches. There are riches and niches.
Yeah.
And the idea of choosing a niche, choosing a specialty. And in my own world, like, again, from the coaching perspective or in my career, when I started as a coach, and like my first few, if you looked at the profile of my clientele, you might have gotten, okay, there's a plumber there, there's a HVAC, or air conditioning company there, there's a real estate broker there, there's two engineers, the financial planner, there's a law firm, and you kind of have this like, okay, well, do you have a specialty? Now there's another, I'm glad for the experience of coaching this a wide variety of people, a couple of, so in the profile that you might looked at, business leaders, business owners, engineers, doctors, attorney, something like that. But as you could tell, it was somewhat all over the map. It was like, if somebody has money, I'm willing to take you as a client.
Mm-hmm.
But this concept of riches and niches, of really finding your ideal client and knowing exactly who you're looking for, everything from their demographic, their income, their race, their ethnic background, their location, and how much money do they have in their bank account, their age, all of these factors, and figuring out exactly who it is you want to work with and work for. So for me, the fears involved were, if I say I'm only going to work with attorneys, does that mean my doctor clients leave me? Does that mean my engineer clients leave me? Does that mean the real estate broker leaves me? Now, what I found is actually it's been the opposite. Not only did I choose just the law or the legal field of attorneys, but I also chose a very precise demographic. I chose, women, and then Latina, Latina attorneys, and specifically law firm owners. So the biggest lesson is it's that concept that there are riches and niches. So I've seen my business blossom significantly in moving over to this, in practicing riches and niches.
Okay, awesome. And what drew you towards working with that specific niche of Latina attorneys? I've been seeing your interviews on those. Those are pretty good. You can catch those.
Mm-hmm.
I think you podcast those, right? And they're also I see them on Facebook and LinkedIn. But
Right.
what drew you to that specific niche?
Right. And in the story there, it goes back to August of 2019. Before I ever had a law firm client, I met with an attorney, and we were just getting to know one another from a business perspective. And she heard what I did and what my focus was, and she knew that I had that motivational element to what I did. And she later explained to me that she perceived me as emotionally intelligent and compassionate. And she explained that who I am and what I do would be a perfect fit for attorneys. She said it to me in August of 2019. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. But I kept doing I work with doctors, attorneys, engineers, business owners. I kept like kind of almost the 4 lanes. I never actually made a transition from the 4 lanes to the 1 lane.
Yeah.
But I kind of kept seeing the message of riches and niches. And I was like, you know what? Like, I think it was highly practical, and back to even being a maximizer, I figured if I'd ask the right questions to attorneys over and over again, like what's the best way to get clients for your law firm? If I asked 30 different law firm owners that question, then like the jewels that I've obtained from asking that one question to this one specific um, industry and this one specific business owner, then I'm building this repository of insight for this one. In other words, I'm becoming the subject matter expert for attorneys and for law firm owners, and I'm establishing myself in that space. So anyway, to answer your question, I was told about it in August of 2019 that I should do it. I effectively helped, as I mentioned earlier, a law firm surpass their revenue by $100,000. That was a big win. I said, you know what? If I did it once, I believe I could do it again.
Yeah.
So if I replicate what I did with that one attorney with other attorneys, then I could yield the same results. And if I could yield the same results with them, they'll continue to want to pay me a premium based on the results I'm able to help them deliver. Then the component of Latina is, of course, being, my last name is Guajardo. People can't say it, they can't spell it, but it is associated with being Hispanic or being Latino, being representing that culture, or that ethnicity, or. So if I targeted other people who are like me, the psychology about it says that people are more likely to be influenced by you if they perceive you are similar to them. In other words, as a Latino, I have a psychological advantage to influence other other Latinos that other ethnic backgrounds don't have. So why not maximize that opportunity?
Awesome. Okay, makes sense. And what's one piece of advice you would give to, because I know we're working together, we're going to do a scholarship fund for young Latinas going to law school. So we're doing that on a money mindset webinar that we're doing. What's one piece of advice you would give to one of those, like maybe a Latino who wants to be a lawyer, that's her dream, or someone who's just graduated from law school? What advice would you give them based on what you've learned so far?
Probably in every realm of what I do, it revolves around this concept of mentors.
Yeah.
And I think I can trace back significant financial opportunities. I can trace back even my career as a coach and as a speaker. I can trace back, even being an author, back to mentors. And even I recall specific conversations over the phone or in person of when I heard a piece of advice. I mean, I remember, I think it was December of 2018 when I was getting advice about launching my business and about being an author, and the advice I was given by a millionaire, and he's a Latinx millionaire, he shared with me, put your head down and write your book. Now, I didn't implement the advice for almost a year later, but I put my head down and I wrote my book. And that became another, again, it's almost like a trophy or an achievement, or I even compare it to another degree. But anyway, back to your question, mentors.
Yeah. Awesome. So like go out there, find an attorney or someone that you admire and ask them, how did you do it? What's your secret?
Right. Find someone that's ahead of you in any area you want to grow in, as a business builder, in your finances, again, romantically, with your mindset, with your health and fitness. Find people that are ahead of you, and then learn, and most importantly, implement. You can learn all day long, but if you don't implement, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And that's so common. I think I spent a lot of time doing that, reading a lot of books, but not implementing. It took a while till I was like, okay, I got to start doing some of this stuff. It actually took reading the same book twice and seeing like, what if I had done it back 5 years ago? What would I do?
Right. I mean, to that point.
Yeah.
And you've probably heard me say this. I've almost stopped asking people if they've read certain books. I might ask them that first question, and then I ask them, but do you live it?
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich. The whole premise of the whole book is about chapter 2. There's a 6 steps in chapter 2 on Think and Grow Rich about what the whole book is about. So you can read the whole book, but if you don't do what's in chapter 2, doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And what specifically is in chapter 2 of Think and Grow Rich? Is that sort of what's in chapter 2 of that book?
Specifically, convey how much money you want by what date.
Ooh.
And then what's your specific action plan to obtain the money. Number 3 is, what will you sacrifice to get this amount of money? Number 4 is write it down. Number 5 is you read it when you wake up in the first thing, and you wake up in the morning. And number 6 is you read it last thing at night. Okay. And so again, the whole book is based on those things. I might have left one out that I didn't memorize, but that's it.
Yeah.
The rest of the book is based on why to do these 6 things.
Okay. Yeah.
And then chapter 3 has another section that says to also read as well. It's called the confidence formula.
Okay. Yeah, that's huge. That sounds like it's like, how are you going to get the $1 million? Everyone wants $1 million, but what are you willing to do?
Right.
What kind of value do you put out there? What are you going to sacrifice? I'm now remembering that chapter. And
right. And something new I'm doing, and you'll hear from me is I'm asking every one of my clients for their millionaire date. I'm gonna ask for their date when they will be a millionaire. And the beauty of it is, it's not about like achieving it necessarily, but it's about the visualization component. And I think that's a big lesson for me in 2020 as well. Is that's what Think and Grow Rich is. It's you're visualizing you already have all the money.
Yeah. And
what's weird is doing it over and over again. For my my millionaire date, I'll share openly. My millionaire date, it's December 31st, 2023 is my millionaire date. I'll be a millionaire on by December 31st, 2023.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about it is, once you say it so many times over and over again, it's like, but you're supposed to visualize that you already have it. Yeah. It's weird because I'm like, yeah, like a millionaire is not really that big of a deal, because you've been saying it, I have it, even though you don't even have it yet, but you're visualizing in every sense of the concept that you already have it. Yeah. So I talk about living like a millionaire, not the concept of spending like a millionaire, because we think sometimes we think being rich is about spending. No, I think it's more about being content, which is counterintuitive. But anyway, we can probably have an entire hour-long conversation about that.
Yeah.
But yes.
No, I know what you mean. The mind automatically goes to spending like a millionaire. which
Right.
everyone has down already. We already got that down.
Right, right.
What you need is like, what type of decisions do they make? How do they think about their money? How do they think about their time? So
Right. And I say openly, I don't have a lot of millionaires in my circle, but I aim to speak to at least 1 millionaire every single week, and I
wow,
do. And then, of course, all the reading and memorizing of other books, I count that as reading from a millionaire, but I'm talking about talking to a millionaire. I'm going to put a whole series together about the lessons I am receiving from millionaires in my circle.
wow, that's amazing. And I'll be sure to call you on December 31st, 2023 and say, we're right. I'm going to call you again on that. I took a
Yeah.
note on that. So
Yes.
anyone watching, what's your millionaire date? What date have you set to become a millionaire? If you
Ooh.
want to put that in the chat, or if you have any questions for Derek, be sure to put those in the chat or comments below. We'll get you an answer. And let's see what we got here. So some great topics there. And let's move on to 2021. We might talk about public speaking later. I know you're great at that, but I want to be respectful of your time for this interview. What lessons would you give to people when it comes to what they should be doing in 2021? The world's obviously changed a lot. So how can people make 2021 their year, really take things to the next level in 2021?
I think it's the concept that I just mentioned in Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill actually mentions it throughout the book, and he talks about the strategies he's providing are not actually just limited to making money, but they're actually anything you want in life. And so if you think about that, I mean, those 6 steps. All right. What do you want? And what he argues is that 98% of people don't know what they want and they don't have a plan.
Yeah.
So again, I mentioned those 6 steps are in chapter 2. The rest of the book is trying to encourage you to do what he's saying to do in chapter 2. Anyway, you asked me the question, what do you do in 2021? Yes, I believe in those 6 steps. If I put one word over those 6 steps, it would be intentional, purposeful, deliberate. And I ask the question over and over to my clients and people in my circle, what do you want? What do you want romantically? What do you want financially? What do you want with your mindset? What do you want with your friendships? What do you want with your health and your fitness? What do you want with your family? What do you want with your career? What do you want with your business? What do you want with your virtues and your values? What do you want with your time in your time management, with your calendar? What do you want with your recreation and relaxation? What do you want with your spirituality? What do you want with your impact on the community? What do you want with your physical comfort? But that is this idea of knowing what you want, having an intentional plan to get what you want, being precise about knowing what you're going to sacrifice, because you can't get something without sacrificing. So, and then going over it over and over again. So,
You've
anyway,
inspired me. I'm going to do that exercise from Think and Grow Rich.
do it.
I read that book 3 times already.
Yes. So, I think that's key, being intentional and knowing what you want, plan, sacrifice, and yes, sir.
Know what you want. Yeah, that's the first step. So intentionality. What are we leaving behind, or what should people leave behind in 2020?
So I'm gonna be a little controversial here and say TV shows, movies,
Tiger King, put it away.
games. You said Tiger King?
Yeah, that's 2020. Just close the door on that.
Oh man. There's this. It's funny because I say the words and I just know people aren't gonna do it. But there's a reason those businesses are thriving. And even with the movie theater shut down, more time to watch TV on home.
Mhm.
But for me, it's this idea of in my life, I want to be in the game
Mhm.
or I want to be on the bench, but I never want to be in the stands. And what I mean by that is when I'm in the game, like to me, I'm in the game right now. I'm in the game on this podcast. This is me in
Yeah.
the game. I'm actively, proactively making an impact, with you, with your people. Hopefully my people get a chance to listen to it as well. Um,
Mhm.
but when I'm not doing this and I'm like rejuvenating or replenishing, that's on the bench. But then when I'm, spending whatever 5 hours watching a Netflix show, like to me, I'm not no longer on the bench. I went to the stands. And
Mhm.
now when I'm in the stands, I'm no longer a participant in the game of life. I'm simply observing, often a scripted version of life, which is what TV and video games can be.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm uh, I'm I'm passionate about being specific about knowing what I want to sacrifice so I could get what I want.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I think that's just such a great message. Leave it behind. I often feel the same way with sports. I'm like, if I'm not playing, I don't want to watch. Um,
Right, exactly,
um,
exactly.
but I know, yeah. But yeah. So be in the game or on the bench. Don't be out in the stands. Very good lesson there. And we talked about 2020, 2021. And is there anything else you want to say before I get to my final question? Anything you thought of from our previous conversations?
Mm, no, I'm good. I mean,
All right.
I'm a talker, so I'm pretty sure I said a whole lot already.
I love it. Very cool. And so my final question here, it doesn't have to be regarding coaching. We didn't really talk about public speaking. I'll ask one question about public speaking. What's the key to effective public speaking? That'll be my one question on that before I ask my final question. Or what makes a great public speaker? Um, I could probably learn from that answer.
Sure. Nah,
Yeah,
I mean, you've heard me say this already, but vulnerable storytelling.
yeah,
So if the way I describe it is people, back to my concept earlier of 90% of the solutions people already have inside of them. In other
yeah,
words, they already know to be truthful with their speaking, to speak words to build people up, not to tear people down. They know to give, to be a giving person as opposed to be a taking person, to be generous, not to be greedy.
mhm,
They know to be a person of integrity. They
yeah,
know that. Like, so all of the virtues in the world are already there. I postulate that there are 80 of them, right? And that's a whole different outline of a different book that I've, put together.
yeah,
But but all of those are already in there. Nobody's created no new virtues. Like, oh, that virtue was never thought of before. Nope.
mhm,
Grit, perseverance, endurance, resilience. I could go off on 80 of them.
yeah,
So no virtues will ever be invented for the rest of for the rest of humanity.
yeah,
Now, so does that mean everybody's automatically living the most virtuous life? No, the answer to that is also no. Now, what actually inspires people is vulnerability. So if you can be vulnerable with your storytelling,
mhm,
so I'll talk about going through a layoff. I'll talk about having a 1993 Corolla that falls apart. I'll talk about my dad's, his suicide. I'll talk about being rejected. I'll talk about being called stupid. I'll talk about being laughed at, um, for the purpose of bringing down the walls of ego to help people to help people to get motivated to move forward. So
yeah,
there's really no power like vulnerable storytelling.
mhm.
Um, that I can really that I can convey. There's no replacement for it.
That's awesome. I like that word you. It tears down the walls of ego, so you can really have a real conversation, or really communicate straight to the person. I love that
Yep.
the way you said that. And thank you. I wanted to at least touch on it because I promised we would talk about public speaking. And that's a great
Mhm.
point. And finally, it doesn't have to be regarding any of these topics, but if you could just say one thing to the audience, if you were only allowed to like, say one thing, what would that thing be? What's the most powerful message you like to convey to the audience before you go?
Yeah. I think it's a classic one, but it's the universe will not allow you to outgive it very long.
Hmm.
So start giving. And when I say give, I'm talking about give, yes, your possessions, give food, give drink, give service, give time. Um, and in my own unique world, again, I think it's normal because I'm living it, but then I look around and I realize that it's not normal. I've counted out 19 weddings that I've either asked to be, whether to be a best man, a groomsman, or even the officiant, which I thought it was normal, but it's not. But then I asked, well, what am I doing differently? And I could talk about a couple of principles, but one of the key things is I just strive to outserve and outgive in all of my relationships. But back to this concept, the universe will not allow you to outgive it for very long. So the more I try to outgive Joseph Warren in our relationship, I just try to outgive him. He doesn't even let me do it. He gives me another opportunity to speak on his podcast. The more I try to outgive it all of my relationships in my marriage, I try to outgive, but the universe just will not allow it. I believe that's God, in the way he's designed karma in the world and in the universe.
Yeah.
But if you understand the universe will not allow you to outgive it for very long, then I hope you are motivated to start giving and start serving and outgive and outserve in all of your relationships, because they won't allow you to do it for very long.
Very cool. I love that. That's a gem. That's a great idea. So thank you very much for being on the podcast, Derek. I want to give you a chance to promote anything you want to promote for the recording or the live stream. Is there anything you want to promote currently?
Yes. So Joseph alluded to the money mindset webinar. I want to give you all a little context of what this is, and what we're doing. There's two phases of this webinar we're doing. So if you've listened thus far and you go, hey, well, Joseph is a gifted speaker, you've been tuning into him. If you've tuned into me and go, hey, well, Derek is a competent communicator as well, then we're giving away this service in the name of raising money for a underrepresented industry, or underrepresented people, which is the Latina attorneys. They make up only 2% of the lawyers in the U.S. We want to be a part of the solution to help them to be more represented, because representation matters. What we're doing is we're giving away the gift of speaking for a webinar so that people can come and learn about money, learn what we've learned about money, business building, so they could take these tips and use them for their lives, but so that 100% of the proceeds goes to a Latina law scholarship. The second phase of that is we want to help Latina students to pay for their undergraduate degree. But there's going to be 4 parts of that program, and it's 1, mentorship, 2, skills, 3, community projects, and the 4th one is something I'm spacing on right now. But anyway, what we're doing is, how can we use the gifts we have and our passions to serve other people? So again, we're trying to live the whole concept. The universe won't allow us to outgive it for very long. We're trying to give away our speaking and our insight to build up other people in other communities. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. It's Strong Life Coach. That's me on all of my platforms, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Actually, scratch all of that, but just reach out to me on Instagram. That's the number 1 place to find me. That's the app that I'm most often using. Reach out to me on Instagram. Follow me there and message me there, and we'll share how you can get involved. Even if you just want to donate, you're like, hey, I don't want to go to the webinar and I don't want to do anything, but I just want to donate. That's one way we are giving and serving to raise money for causes we believe in.
Very cool. I'll be sure to add your Instagram to the description below, as well as a link if people want the link. And thank you very much for that. Just had a great conversation with my good friend, Derek Guajardo, on the keys to coaching, self-development in 2021, the things we need to be focusing on, and also some of the things we should let go of in 2020. I really appreciate you for being on here today. It was a great conversation. If you enjoyed it, feel free to share it with someone that you love or someone that is just committed to growth in 2021. I think it might be a great interview for them to watch. And thank you very much. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you, Derek. I'm so glad to have you on. Thank you, audience. I see some comments here. Hey, Harrison. And my looks like my sister's also watching here, my producer. So great stuff going on here. And everyone, I wish you all a happy, safe, amazing new year. We're going to make 2021 the best year ever. Signing off.
Thank you.
Let's see how to do this. Okay.